Every week, without thinking, you drag your trash to the curb. That single act, repeated by 330 million Americans, funnels billions of dollars into a handful of companies you've never heard of. The waste management industry is worth over $300 billion a year. It's nearly impossible to compete in, and it quietly prints money through every recession, every pandemic, and every economic crash. This is how that actually works. Let's start with the number that surprises almost everyone. The U.S. waste management industry generates roughly $313 billion in annual revenue when you include environmental remediation and related services. The core waste and recycling market, meaning collection, disposal, and processing, recently crossed $100 billion for the first time in its history. The global market is approximately $1.5 trillion a year, spread across every country on Earth. For context, that's larger than the entire semiconductor market, and about the same size as the global pharmaceutical industry. Why don't more people know this? Because garbage doesn't feel like a business. It feels like a utility, like water or electricity, something that just happens invisibly in the background. That's exactly why the economics are so fascinating, because underneath that invisible surface sits one of the most structurally protected, oligopoly-driven, pricing power-rich industries in the American economy. Here's the thing, most people get completely wrong about this sector. The trucks are almost irrelevant. The money isn't in hauling trash. It's in where you put it afterward. A company that only runs routes is fighting on thin margins, high fuel costs, competitive pricing, constant labor pressure. The real structural advantage in this industry comes down to one asset, the landfill. Everything else, the trucks, the routes, the contracts, is just a delivery system for getting waste to that single choke point. And here's why that matters more than almost anything else. A landfill isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a permitted asset, and getting a permit to build a new one in the United States is, in practical terms, nearly impossible. The permitting process takes years, sometimes decades. Environmental reviews, community opposition, regulatory hurdles. Most applications never make it through. The number of active landfills in the U.S. has dropped by more than 75% since 1990. There are fewer landfills today than at any point in the modern era of the industry. So here's the economic structure that creates. If you're a regional waste hauler and you don't own a landfill, you have to pay someone who does. In the industry, this is called a tipping fee, and in many U.S. markets, the company setting that tipping fee and the company running the collection routes are the same company. You are, quite literally, paying your competitor to dispose of the waste you collected. That's not an accident. That's a protective moat. Most business leaders can name Coca-Cola's revenue off the top of their head, but almost none of them, let alone the general public, can name the company that made more money last year than Southwest Airlines, AutoZone, or General Mills. That company is Waste Management, Inc., $25 billion in annual revenue, nearly $100 billion market cap, and 20 million residential customers who have essentially no choice but to keep paying. Their closest competitor, Republic Services, adds another $16 billion in annual revenue. Together, those two companies control half the garbage collection revenue in the United States. That's not a competitive market. That's a duopoly hiding in plain sight. Two additional players round out the spine of the American waste economy. Waste Connections operates primarily in secondary markets, smaller cities and suburban regions where competition is thinner and pricing power is even stronger. And Clean Harbors focuses on hazardous and industrial waste, which operates under an entirely different regulatory and pricing framework. In most cities, there are 2 or 3 legitimate options for commercial waste service, and frequently only one for residential. Many municipalities award a single contract covering the entire city, renewed every few years. If you hold it, you have a near-captive customer base with guaranteed volume. Nationwide, this is textbook oligopoly economics, a small number of firms with significant pricing power, high barriers to entry, and structural advantages that compound over time. The difference between this and, say, the airline or telecom oligopoly is that waste management does it quietly, without the public scrutiny, the congressional hearings, or the consumer outrage. After all, trash doesn't lend itself to trending on social media. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when the entire service economy froze, garbage collection was declared essential on day one. Revenue dipped slightly as commercial volumes dropped. But the residential side, which accounts for nearly half of all collection revenue, barely moved. Several of the industry's major players actually posted record profits in 2020. Then, go back to 2008. When entire industries were ruined by the financial crisis, people still threw away trash. That's the fundamental economic characteristic underlying the entire sector. Demand is not discretionary. You cannot choose not to generate waste, and you cannot opt out of disposal. In most markets, you cannot meaningfully choose your provider. That combination, inelastic demand, captive customers, and limited competition, is the economic equivalent of a printing press. If you've ever looked closely at a trash bill and seen a line item called a fuel surcharge or environmental recovery fee, you've already met this mechanism. Those fees aren't incidental. They're contractual. Built into almost every commercial waste agreement in the country is a clause that lets prices go up automatically, year over year, tied loosely to inflation. And in practice, they almost never go down. Waste management has raised prices in most markets every single year for over a decade. Not by enough to make headlines. Just enough to compound quietly, year after year, with customers who have nowhere to go. The customer rarely has meaningful leverage to push back, because switching providers means finding someone with a truck, a route, and access to a landfill, all of which the incumbent already controls. These landfills are unique in this industry because they make money twice. The first time is obvious. Tipping fees. Every ton of waste that enters a landfill generates a fee, typically $40 to $60 per ton in most U.S. markets, and significantly higher in densely populated coastal regions where landfill capacity is scarce. New York and New Jersey routinely see tipping fees above $100 per ton. For a large landfill receiving several thousand tons per day, the math compounds quickly. The second time is less obvious. As organic waste decomposes underground, it generates methane. In commercial landfills, that methane is captured through a network of pipes and converted into electricity or pipeline-quality natural gas. This is called landfill gas-to-energy, and it has quietly become a significant secondary revenue stream for landfill operators. Waste Management, Inc. alone operates dozens of these energy projects across the country, selling power back to utilities and directly to commercial customers. So the same pile of garbage generates a tipping fee when it arrives, and then generates energy revenue for the next 20 to 30 years as it breaks down. There is almost no other business model in the American economy where you get paid to accept an asset, and then that asset generates cash for 3 decades. The economics are strange, but they work extraordinarily well when you own the landfill. That said, running a large-scale waste operation is more demanding than it looks. Diesel fuel is a major cost driver. A fleet of collection trucks burns through enormous quantities, and fuel price volatility creates margin pressure the industry manages through those contractual surcharges. Labor is another significant cost. Drivers, equipment operators, and facility workers are often unionized in urban markets, and wage increases flow directly to the cost side. Environmental liability is the cost most people never see, but it shapes the entire industry's financial structure. When a landfill closes, and they all eventually do, the operator is required by law to monitor and maintain the site for 30 years post-closure. Groundwater monitoring, methane capture, cap maintenance, and more. The liability doesn't end with the last truckload. It runs for decades. This is part of why scale matters so much. The companies large enough to absorb those long-tail liabilities have a structural advantage over smaller operators who can't. Looking toward the future, there's a quiet shift happening that could reshape this industry's economics entirely. For decades, waste companies got paid once to haul things away and bury them. But governments are increasingly forcing the companies that make products to pay for disposing of them too. It's called extended producer responsibility, and it means the waste processor gets paid by the hauler and now also gets paid by the manufacturer. The same material generates fees at both ends. It's the same double-dipping structure as the landfill, except applied across the entire supply chain. Electronic waste is the most important growth driver in this space. E-waste is one of the fastest-growing waste streams in the world, expanding at over 10% annually, and it commands disposal fees that dwarf conventional municipal waste. E-waste is also one of the reasons that the industry's center of gravity is slowly shifting from simple landfill disposal toward value recovery, converting discarded items and byproducts into economically useful products, materials, or energy. It's a substantially more profitable business model. The United States is the world's largest per capita waste generator. Americans produce roughly 4.9 pounds of trash per person per day, about twice the European average and more than 3 times the global average. That makes the U.S. the most valuable market in the world for waste services, precisely because its population produces so much material that needs managing. And globally, the $1.5 trillion industry is growing fastest in Asia and the Middle East, where urbanization is generating waste volumes that existing infrastructure can't handle. The most valuable businesses in America don't need to advertise. They don't run Super Bowl spots or chase viral moments or compete for your attention. They just wait, because you have no choice but to come back. You have been a customer of this industry every single day of your life. You've never once chosen your provider. You've never once negotiated your price. And until today, you probably didn't know the name of the garbage company taking your money. That's not a bug. That's the whole model.